Every morning, millions of Americans start their day in exactly the same way. They walk into the bathroom, pick up a toothbrush, squeeze a line of toothpaste across the bristles, and begin brushing. It's one of the most routine habits in modern life. So routine, in fact, that most people never stop to think about what's actually inside that tube of toothpaste. The focus is usually on the promises printed on the box. Cavity protection, stronger enamel, whiter teeth, fresh breath. But hidden within many of those formulas is an ingredient that has been approved for use in toothpaste for more than half a century. An ingredient first evaluated by regulators in the United States around 1970, and despite decades of new research, new technology, and new dental science, that same ingredient is still sitting inside countless tubes of toothpaste today: fluoride. If you've ever looked closely at the back of a toothpaste box, you've probably seen it listed among the active ingredients. Sometimes as sodium fluoride, sometimes as stannous fluoride, sometimes as sodium monofluorophosphate. All of them serve the same basic purpose: protecting teeth from cavities. But the story of fluoride in toothpaste is far more complex than most people realize. Because fluoride isn't just a cleaning ingredient, it's a mineral that actively changes the chemistry of your teeth. To understand why fluoride became such a central part of dental care, we need to go back nearly a century. In the early 20th century, dentists began noticing something unusual in certain communities. In some towns, residents had fewer cavities than people living in neighboring areas. But those same residents often had a strange discoloration on their teeth, white spots or streaks that sometimes appeared brown. At first, dentists weren't sure what was causing it. But researchers eventually discovered a common factor: the water supply. Some regions had naturally higher levels of fluoride in their groundwater. Fluoride is a naturally occurring mineral found in rocks and soil. As groundwater flows through these materials, small amounts of fluoride dissolve into the water. When people drink that water regularly, fluoride becomes part of their daily mineral intake. Scientists eventually realized something remarkable. At low levels, fluoride seemed to strengthen tooth enamel and reduce cavities. But at higher levels, it could cause dental fluorosis, the discoloration dentists had observed earlier. That discovery launched decades of research into fluoride's role in dental health. By the mid-20th century, public health officials began experimenting with controlled fluoride levels in community water supplies. The results were dramatic. Communities with fluoridated water often saw cavity rates drop significantly among children. Encouraged by those findings, dental researchers began exploring ways to deliver fluoride directly to teeth through toothpaste. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, fluoride toothpaste had undergone clinical testing and regulatory evaluation. In 1970, the FDA formally recognized certain fluoride compounds as effective cavity-fighting ingredients in toothpaste. And from that point forward, fluoride toothpaste quickly became the standard. Today, nearly every major toothpaste brand includes fluoride in at least some of its formulas: Colgate, Crest, Sensodyne, Arm & Hammer. Many others, but here's where the story becomes more interesting. Fluoride doesn't work the way many people think. It doesn't simply coat your teeth like a protective shield. Instead, it interacts with the mineral structure of tooth enamel itself. Tooth enamel is made primarily of a mineral called hydroxyapate. When bacteria in the mouth break down sugars from food, they produce acids. Those acids slowly dissolve the mineral structure of enamel. Over time, this process creates cavities. Fluoride helps counteract this process in two important ways. First, it can incorporate into the enamel structure, creating a slightly different mineral called fluoropatite. Fluoropatite is more resistant to acid than regular enamel. That means teeth become more durable against the acids produced by bacteria. Second, fluoride can help remineralize enamel. When early stages of tooth decay begin, fluoride encourages minerals like calcium and phosphate to redeposit into the enamel surface. This process can actually repair microscopic damage before a cavity fully forms. For dentists, this combination of protection and repair made fluoride incredibly valuable. Cavity prevention became easier. Children experienced fewer dental problems. And overall oral health improved across many populations. But as fluoride use expanded in water, toothpaste, and other dental products, researchers also began studying how much fluoride people were exposed to overall. Because like many substances, fluoride's effects depend heavily on dose. At very low levels, it strengthens enamel. At higher levels, it can affect tooth appearance. And at extremely high levels, it can influence bone structure and other biological systems. Most people brushing their teeth today are exposed to fluoride in small amounts. Toothpaste typically contains around 1,000 to 1,500 parts per million of fluoride. When used properly, brushing and then spitting out the foam, the amount swallowed is extremely small. But the presence of fluoride in toothpaste has sparked debate over the years. Some critics question whether fluoride exposure from multiple sources adds up over time. Others argue that the dental benefits far outweigh the risks when used correctly. Public health organizations, such as the American Dental Association, continue to recommend fluoride toothpaste as one of the most effective tools for preventing cavities. But the conversation surrounding fluoride hasn't disappeared. In fact, it has evolved. Some toothpaste brands now offer fluoride-free alternatives aimed at consumers who prefer different ingredients. These products often rely on compounds like hydroxyapate or xylitol to support dental health. Whether these alternatives provide the same level of cavity protection remains a topic of ongoing research. But what's fascinating about fluoride is how long it has remained a cornerstone of dental care. More than 50 years after regulatory approval, the same ingredient evaluated in the 1970s is still protecting millions of smiles every single day. Yet many people who use fluoride toothpaste have never stopped to ask a simple question. If fluoride has been used for so long, what have scientists learned about it since those early studies? Have new discoveries changed how researchers view it? And why do some toothpaste brands now offer formulas without it? In the next part of this investigation, we'll explore how fluoride research has evolved over the past half-century and what modern science says about the ingredient sitting inside your toothpaste right now. By the time fluoride toothpaste became widely available in the 1970s, dental health in the United States was already beginning to change. For generations before that, cavities were incredibly common. Many adults expected to lose teeth as they aged. Dentures were often considered a normal part of getting older. But once fluoride began appearing both in drinking water and in toothpaste, something remarkable happened. Cavity rates began to drop. Large population studies showed significant declines in tooth decay among children who grew up using fluoridated toothpaste and drinking fluoridated water. For dentists, this was one of the biggest public health successes of the 20th century. But scientific understanding never stands still. As decades passed, researchers continued studying fluoride more closely. They wanted to understand not only how fluoride protects teeth, but also how the body processes it. Because once you brush your teeth, fluoride doesn't simply vanish. A tiny amount remains in the mouth, where it continues strengthening enamel. Some of it mixes with saliva and is eventually swallowed. From there, it enters the digestive system. The body absorbs fluoride primarily through the stomach and small intestine. Once absorbed, fluoride travels through the bloodstream. A portion eventually becomes incorporated into bones and teeth. The rest is filtered by the kidneys and excreted in urine. In healthy adults, this process happens efficiently. But because fluoride accumulates in bones over time, scientists have long studied how long-term exposure affects the body. At the levels found in toothpaste and fluoridated water, most research suggests the risk remains extremely low. However, scientists did identify one condition linked to higher fluoride exposure during childhood: dental fluorosis. Dental fluorosis occurs when children consume too much fluoride while their teeth are still developing. Instead of strengthening enamel evenly, excess fluoride can disrupt the mineralization process. This leads to small white streaks or spots on the teeth. In most cases, the effect is purely cosmetic and mild. But in areas where fluoride levels in water were historically very high, more noticeable discoloration sometimes occurred. This discovery led to updated recommendations for toothpaste use in young children. Dentists now advise using only a tiny smear of fluoride toothpaste for toddlers and a pea-sized amount for older children. The goal is to provide cavity protection while minimizing the amount that might be swallowed. These guidelines have helped reduce the risk of fluorosis while preserving the benefits of fluoride, but fluoride research didn't stop there. Over the years, scientists also began studying whether fluoride might influence other biological systems. Because fluoride interacts strongly with minerals, researchers examined its potential effects on bones. In extremely high concentrations, far beyond what people encounter in toothpaste, fluoride can affect bone density. In rare cases where drinking water contains very high natural fluoride levels, a condition called skeletal fluorosis can develop. This condition involves changes in bone structure and joint stiffness. However, skeletal fluorosis is typically associated with fluoride concentrations many times higher than those found in regulated water supplies. In countries with carefully controlled water fluoridation, cases are extremely rare. Still, the existence of these conditions reinforced an important principle in toxicology. Dose matters. Even beneficial substances can become harmful at high enough levels. Water, vitamins, minerals, all of them follow this basic rule, and fluoride is no different. Another area of research has focused on fluoride's potential effects on the brain and nervous system. Some studies conducted in regions with very high natural fluoride levels have explored possible associations between fluoride exposure and cognitive development in children. These studies remain controversial because many of the areas studied also have other environmental factors that can influence health outcomes. Researchers continue to examine these questions carefully. But so far, major health organizations, including the World Health Organization, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the American Dental Association, continue to support fluoride use in toothpaste as a safe and effective measure for cavity prevention when used appropriately. At the same time, consumer awareness has grown dramatically. Today, shoppers standing in the toothpaste aisle may notice something that didn't exist decades ago. Fluoride-free toothpaste options, brands marketing themselves as natural alternatives often avoid fluoride entirely. Instead, they rely on ingredients such as hydroxyapate, xylitol, or plant-derived compounds designed to support oral health. Hydroxyapate, for example, is the same mineral that makes up tooth enamel. Some researchers believe nanohydroxyapate particles may help fill microscopic enamel defects in a way similar to fluoride's remineralization process. Japan has used hydroxyapate-based toothpastes for years. But large-scale long-term studies comparing their cavity prevention effectiveness with fluoride toothpaste are still ongoing. Xylitol, another common alternative ingredient, is a sugar alcohol that certain oral bacteria cannot metabolize. Because cavity-causing bacteria rely on sugars to produce acid, replacing sugar with xylitol may reduce acid production in the mouth. Many chewing gums use xylitol for this reason. However, most dentists still consider fluoride the gold standard for cavity prevention because its effects have been studied so extensively over many decades. And that brings us back to the original question: why is an ingredient approved more than 50 years ago still used today? Because sometimes, when a scientific discovery works remarkably well, it remains useful for generations. Fluoride toothpaste dramatically reduced cavities across large populations. It strengthened enamel, it slowed tooth decay, and it provided a simple, inexpensive way for people to protect their teeth every day. That doesn't mean research has stopped. Scientists continue studying fluoride's interactions with the body and exploring alternative ingredients that may one day complement or replace it. But for now, fluoride remains one of the most thoroughly researched and widely used ingredients in modern dental care. Which is why, the next time you squeeze toothpaste onto your toothbrush, you're participating in a small piece of scientific history. A discovery that began nearly a century ago. A regulatory decision made in the 1970s, and a daily habit that has helped millions of people keep their teeth healthier for longer. It's easy to overlook something as ordinary as toothpaste, but sometimes the most ordinary products in our daily routine carry the most fascinating stories. Stories hidden in tiny ingredients most of us never even notice. And now that you know what's inside that tube on your bathroom sink, you might never look at it the same way again.